Okay, well, we're working our way through solving quadratic equations. As mentioned before, there's four different ways of solving quadratic equations. This one is using what's called the quadratic formula. These other methods work for different circumstances. The quadratic equation works, the quadratic formula works for all situations. Sometimes it's not really necessary, but you can solve any quadratic equation using the quadratic formula. Like I say, sometimes it's just kind of overkill. Couple things to notice before you start using this. One, uh, the quadratic equation has to be set up so that the right side equals 0. So you got to have all these things over here, put it in this order with the squared term, then the linear term, then the constant term, uh, and then equals 0 over here. Okay, couple other things. One, this square root sign goes over this entire b squared minus 4ac, the whole thing. Okay, and this fraction bar goes underneath the entire negative b plus or minus b squared minus 4ac. Okay, then there's a 2 underneath that. So let's get going here. First of all, the a, b, and c refer to the numbers, we call them coefficients, in front of the x squared term, the x term, and the constant term. Okay, in this case, A is 2, B is 5, and C is negative 3. So what you're going to do is just put all those things into this formula. Now, you probably have discussed in class, this formula didn't just come out of nowhere. There's a perfectly reasonable explanation for why it works. That's beyond the scope of this video, but you can look it up and see the development of the quadratic formula. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're just simply going to say x equals, and we're going to start putting the numbers in here. And I'm going to give you a couple of pieces of advice. Okay, uh, and so here we go. This says negative b, so whatever b is, write its opposite right here. Okay, so since b is 5, we'll write negative 5. If b had been negative 5, we'd write positive 5 because it says the opposite of b. Okay, plus or minus, and then a big square root sign. Okay, underneath the square root sign, we've got b squared. That's, in this case, 25. And I recommend that you just go ahead and square 25 and write that answer down. The reason is, if b happened to be a negative number, you know you're supposed to get a positive number when you square a positive or a negative number. But sometimes people put this in a calculator. If they type in negative 5 squared, they might get negative 25, depending on how the calculator is set up. Okay, so I recommend you just square that number and write it there. Minus 4 times A, in this case, is 2, and C is negative 3. Okay, if you need to extend your square root sign, no problem, you make it bigger. Okay, then put a big giant fraction bar underneath this whole thing. Okay, and, oops, I've got this wrong. This should be down below, all over 2 times A. So in this case, 2 times A is going to be 4, because A is 2. So I'll put a 4 down here. Okay, everything else I'm just going to leave it that way for now. Okay, so my couple things I recommend you do is make sure you square the b in this step, and go ahead and just multiply your value of a by 2 to write the denominator. Okay, now we're going to keep going. Okay, and I'm going to do the part under the square root sign next. Okay, you know that you should do multiplications before you do subtractions, so I'm going to write 25 minus, and then 4 times 2 times negative 3 is negative 24. Okay, be careful. Sometimes people call this a negative 4, but they've already used that as a subtraction, so you can't use it twice. I wrote it as a minus, so I can't use it again here. So it's 4 times 2 times negative 3 is negative 24. That's still all over 4. And then 25 minus negative 24 is the same thing as 25 plus 24. And that is 49. Okay. Now, we need to stop and ask ourselves, is this square root something that can be simplified? If it can, then keep going. If it can't be, then you're done. Okay. So I'm going to keep going here because square root 49 is 7. I'll write negative 5 plus or minus 7 over 4. Now, can I keep going from there? Sure. This plus or minus means you're going to get two answers, one when you add 7 and one when you subtract 7. So we'll simplify both of those. Negative 5 plus 7 is 2, and that's over 4 from the 4 here. And negative 5 minus 7 is negative 12 over 4. And both of those answers can be simplified. That's 1/2 and negative 3. So there are your answers for that quadratic equation. Okay. On the next one over here, remember I said that you needed to have a 0 over here. Well, we don't have a 0 over here, so we'll get one. We'll get rid of that 20 by subtracting it to the other side. So I'll have 9x squared plus 3x, and I'll subtract 20 from each side, so I get negative 20 over here on the left and 0 on the right. Okay, and then I'll identify, sometimes I actually write them over here. I'll say A is 9, B is 3, and C is negative 20. Okay, so here we go. From the formula, x equals negative b, so we got 3, so negative 3. Whoops. Negative 3 plus or minus a big square root sign. Okay, b squared is 9, so I'll just write that, minus 4 times a, which is 9, times c, which is negative 20. Okay, and all over 2 times a, which is 18. Okay. So I've simply put all the numbers into the formula. I've done just a couple of calculations. I squared b, I multiplied a by 2, but the rest of it, I just wrote it in there. Okay, now we'll keep going. Negative 3 plus or minus, what is all this mess here anyway? 9 minus 4 times 9 times negative 20. Let's see, 9 minus, that's going to be 36 times 20 is 720. So negative 720 all over 18. And that's equal to negative 3 plus or minus the square root of 729 all over 18. Okay, well, what is the square root of 729 anyway? Well, if you have a calculator, I think I can do a calculator over here. Square root 729, and figuring that out on a calculator off screen here, and let's see what we got. Okay, so square root 729 is 27, so I've got negative 3 plus or minus 27 over 18. Well, I can keep going from there. Negative 3 plus 27 is 24 over 8. Okay, and negative 3 minus 27 is negative 30 over 8. Okay, well, each of those can be simplified. 24 over 8 is 3, and negative 30 over 8 is negative 15 over 4. And I can't simplify that anymore. I'm not going to worry about writing that as negative 3 and 3/4. If you want to, knock yourself out, but I'm fine with that being the answer. Okay. Well, there's one more I want to look at. This one looks a little bit more complicated just because there's so much stuff. But again, I need to make sure I've got a 0 over here. So what I'll do is subtract x from each side. I have to subtract x from where there's x's. And I'll subtract 15 from each side. And then that'll set me up for having 2x squared here, a negative 4x, and a minus 5 equals 0. So I'm all set up with the right side equaling 0. Now I can identify a, b, and c. A is 2, b is negative 4, and c is negative 5. So we'll take all those numbers, stick them in the formula, and see what we get. X equals negative 4 is positive 4. Okay. Under the square root sign, negative 4 squared is positive 16. So I'll just write 16 minus 4 times a is 2, and b is c is negative 5. Okay. All divided by 2 times what a is. So a is 2, so 4. Okay. Let's see what we can do with this. I'll just write the rest of the stuff here. And what is this 16 minus, looks like 16 minus negative 40. Okay. And so that would be 4 plus or minus the square root of 56 over 4. Well, can this be simplified? Well, you're not going to get a whole number, and we've done this in class, done other videos. How do you simplify a square root? Well, I want to write 56 with its prime factorization, so I'm going to find out what that is. 56 divides by 2 to get 28, which divides by 2 to get 14, which divides by 2 to get 7. 7's prime, so I can stop. Okay, that tells me that 56 is made up of 2 times 2 times 2 times 7. Okay, and as you'll see in videos about this, that means I can rewrite that as 4 plus or minus 2 square root 14 all over 4. Okay, if that's not making sense how I got that, go ahead and find the videos about simplifying square roots. Okay, well, that looks like it can be simplified further. 4 and 4 can be reduced, and 2 and 4 can be reduced. So I'm going to split this up into two separate fractions so I can do those separately. Okay, and then we can say, look, 4 over 4 is 1. You can't cancel the 4 outside of square root sign with a 14 inside the square root sign. That doesn't work. But you can count or reduce the 2 and 4. The 2 would be reduced to a 1, and the 4 would be reduced to a 2. So I basically divided top and bottom here by 2. Square root 14 can't be simplified anymore, and so we'll just leave our answer in a simplified form right there. Okay, so some of them can be simplified down to whole numbers or fractions. Others of them, if you can reduce the square root down to a whole number, great. If not, reduce it as far as you can and then leave it that way. Okay, that's going to do it.